TV Spoilers with your host, DT2. What's up, y'all? DT2 Comics Chat here. We are actually going to discuss the final 4 episodes of Andor all in one fell swoop, or what the Human Torch called one swell foop. I know we're late, but better late than never. We're going to get it done. So let me welcome my co-host so we can jump right in. Welcome to David Nemesis Howard.
Hey, what's up, everybody? And I am part of the reason we are late, and I want to thank these gentlemen right here. They so graciously gave me last week off. We had a little bit of a family emergency, but everything is fine. I'm ready to tackle these 4 episodes. I'm buckled in. I'm ready for the prison break. Oops, did a little Tom Holland there. So let's do it. Let's get it.
Welcome to Steve Shadewing Sellers.
This Disney Star Wars usually makes my mind into a sunless space, but in the case of these last episodes, there has been more of a light at the end of the tunnel, but we'll get into that pretty sure I'm sure.
And welcome to Jeff, Mr. Happy Brace.
What's up, everybody? I tell you, man, like, this series started off shaky, but it has been on a steady incline upward, and it finishes strong. So I can't wait to get into this, and lots of interesting lead-ins to what I'm sure will be a season 2 before long.
Now, I couldn't agree more with that last statement. These last 4 episodes had enough of a payoff to make, the first part be really interesting, and you really cared about what was happening, and you really wanted to see it through to the conclusion. So it was definitely a slow build, but there's definitely enough payoff to make it worth your while and make it quite enjoyable. And I was actually quite surprised at where a lot of it goes. So we're going to discuss the last 4 episodes. We're going to spend about 30 minutes per episode so we can come in under the 2-hour mark. So we're going to start with episode 9. We're talking about Andor season 1, episode 9. It's entitled Nobody's Listening. Now, if ever there was an appropriately titled episode, if ever a title was foreshadowing, if ever an episode paid off what it said it was about, it's with Nobody's Listening. And just to sum it up, when you are so sure of your victory that you just think you need electrified floors to corral people, that's the same as electrified fences for cows. And also when you are short-staffed, when you do not have the personnel to enforce what you're doing, so you depend on psychological warfare because you figure you'll just psych them out. But you don't realize with people like Andor and Andy Serkis around, they can count no more than 12, never more than 12 guards, and that's the time, that's the window that we need to make our break. So this is the one where I can honestly say this was the episode that made me care about Cassian again from the first episode. I cared about him when we first meet him because he was looking for a sister, because he seemed like he was on some type of quest, and because like Han Solo, he got in a situation where he kind of had to shoot his way out, and then he becomes a wanted man. Everything after that was about the beginning of the rebellion, okay? And he just seemed to be a bit player in his own show. But here in this episode, it comes into focus why we're following him, why we should care, because he finally does what I call, he finally Batmans his way out. He uses this, and it becomes MacGyver, and he works with other people, and I must say I really enjoyed it. So just to get into a little bit of details, because we only got 30 minutes per episode, and then, of course, I'm going to let Steve go on Captain Tool and his feelings for Dedra, because if ever a simp there was, Cyril is one because of the simpiest things that he does. But I'm going
to simp is strong with this one.
That's right. So I'm going to let Steve have that one. But so we finally see Cassian, again, like I said, working with Andy Serkis' character, and finally getting on to the idea of how can we get out of here. But what you see in Cassian that is reflected later, obviously in Rogue One, that finally emotionally ties you into him is his determination that anything can be done. So I don't know about my co-host, but for me, that was a turning point for me as a fan and me as a writer, hearing about him, that attitude, that it can be done. We just have to figure out a way to do it. I love that. I thought that was awesome. And of course, the episode opens with my favorite scene, which is Bix getting tortured, and her torture is big screams. So they put some headphones on her, and like, we're gonna let you listen to all the people we killed. And it's kind of a shriek, but don't worry, if you start to go deaf, just shake your head. We'll understand.
It's kind of like that scene in Back to the Future where Marty wakes up his dad with the headphones.
Right.
My name is Darth Vader. I'm an extraterrestrial from the planet Vulcan. It just came straight out of that.
That's right. That's right. So all that was happening. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm going to let Steve have his rant with Captain Tool and Dedra, and then we'll go to the other stuff. Take it away, Steve.
Oh my God. Every time I really feel like these last episodes, Captain Tool has really not accomplished very much of anything. They do kind of later on, but we'll get into that in when we talk about that episode. But even then, it doesn't really work for me. But particularly in these episodes, they're trying to push this relationship with Dedra and Captain Tool, and it's just so forced, and it's like she's not that into you. She's just not. No one would be into you. You inspire nothing. You do not inspire loyalty. You do not inspire trust. You do not inspire respect. You are a joke. I mean, every time you try to make something of your life, you screw it up because you keep back to the same thing. You are placing blame for your troubles onto this guy, and you are obsessively, doggedly pursuing him, even though everyone in the world tells you not to do it. I mean, he would have a career right now, in the Morlana corporate police, if he had actually listened to his boss. He doesn't listen to Dedra. He doesn't listen to his mother. Well, granted, okay, no, you shouldn't listen to her, but he doesn't listen to anyone. And then what ends up happening is that he ends up taking steps back because and keeps getting into trouble because he doesn't let go. He does not know how to let go. And not only is he obsessive towards Cassian, we're starting to see that he has an obsessive personality when it comes to Dedra. And she's just like, why am I having to put up with this guy? Why doesn't this guy, have any basic common sense to speak of? And every time you see her interact with him, she's just trying to rebuff him and push him away. And it's just, he doesn't get the hint. He doesn't get the hint. She wants nothing to do with you, dude. She's never going to want anything to do with you because you don't inspire any respect whatsoever. And you have the common sense of a rock. Every time this character keeps coming back, it's like, okay, I understand that they want this character that is a Inspector Javert, but he's a moron.
Okay, you picked up on that.
He makes stupid decisions constantly, and on top of that, he's obsessing over things that are self-destructive or have self-destructive consequences. And he learns, and he doesn't. And once again, going back to our constant, meme with Harley, Captain Tool don't learn nothing. He don't learn nothing. He never learns when his obsessiveness and his stupidity get him into trouble. And it's the same thing with Dedra. And I'm honestly amazed that she just hasn't hauled him into an Imperial holding cell, after the stupid stuff he does trying to follow her. I'm just so tired of him.
So tired. I mean, I will add one more. You don't inspire. You don't even inspire your mama.
Well, I love
your
Dedra's
mama's calling in extra people to try to help you get a life.
I love Dedra's expression. She looks like every time he tries to engage with her, she looks like she just stepped in gum and she's trying to scrape it off her shoe.
Yeah.
That face, you get like, yeah.
Now, we're going to jump to my favorite part, the Bix torture scene. Now, it was very reminiscent to me of Vader. It felt very much like Vader and Han in Empire in that room. It felt like Vader and Leia in A New Hope with the floating kind of B-movie, kind of Flash Gordon probes with the needles. Because whenever you see needles, you're in trouble. Except this time we got to see, psychologically, we got to see both Dedra and Dr. Frankenstein get in her head. before they literally started torturing her to let her know what was coming. And I thought it was wicked brilliant. I thought it was very much, you're going to tell me what I want to know. You know, the amount of pain that it takes to get there is up to you, but you're out of options, that kind of thing. And I just thought it was great. And it was like, you know, it was another, how can I say it? Maybe foreshadowing is the word I mean, but it was another emotional connecting point to the empire that we know. And I thought that was really well written and really well acted, because that's what you want these series to be. You don't want them to be so divorced from Star Wars proper until, as Jeff says, we have to do the work of the show to connect them.
Mm-hmm.
You want them, you don't want it too heavy on member bearers, because then it'll be all nostalgia, Star Trek Picard, but you do want it to be close enough so that you can feel the same flow, even with a different camera angle. So let me hear what you guys think about that whole torture scene. Start with Nims.
Yeah, you know, this scene, I do agree with you. I think it definitely did have that. It felt like that they were inflicting pain for pain's sake and in order to draw out someone else, which is right out of, like you said, what Vader did to Han. It was all about, you know, making it so that Luke had to come, you know, reverberations through the Force. Now, Cassidy doesn't have that, but you see that same callousness, that same brutal disregard for convention with the Empire. And I'm all about it. You know, they really do the Empire very well. I'd say they do the Empire very well through the whole series, pretty much. You know, that I could say, you know, without reservation. So I think that they covered this, you know, and did what they wanted to do with this scene very well. And then if you're not a fan of Bix, you're sitting there cheering because you're like, yeah, she's getting what she needs. So.
Yep. Bracy, what do you think?
I think you need to answer that phone.
No.
I love the connective tissue here. In all three original Star Wars films, we have seen torture. First with the probe droid in Princess Leia, or the torture droid. We see Han getting tortured on the metaphorical rack. And then later on, the Emperor tortures Luke with the Force in front of his father as both a punishment, an execution, and an abject lesson to Vader. You know, because the Emperor was multifaceted that way. But here, the torture scene is so wonderfully built up, you know, letting you know what's going to happen. That's part of the psychological warfare that happens before the physical pain ever starts when it comes to torture methodology. And just like torture methodology used today by various agencies out there in the world, everybody knows the average time somebody will break generally within 3 days if you apply enough pressure on them. And by breaking, they're just going to either tell you everything or they're just going to tell you what you want to hear. Nobody can sustain torture long term. So by kind of setting the plate and having the example of her compatriot already leaving, you know, as a basket case, you know, her wheels are already turning before that. But the thing that grips me is not just how well that's played out, as Nem stated, like how ruthlessly callous these people are. And the scene is played to a T. But we really get into some ickiness of the Empire that we hadn't before when they talk about how they committed genocide against this particular people. And they discovered that their whales had this sort of almost psychic component to it that would turn people's brains to mush as you tried to kill them. And they weaponized that. And that is just a level of cruelty and insidiousness that was beyond anything I'd seen in Star Wars before. So you really get a whole new level of appreciation for just how evil these people are. And this goes to a later part in the show when we see Marva's speech at the end, when she's going like, you know, they left us alone, they left us alone, they left us alone. And we're okay because they left us alone. And this kind of leads into the whole thing. It's like, you can't let people like this be in charge. They will never, ever let you alone. And this is what's eventually coming.
How evil they are, and as you alluded to, how they relish being evil. That's the flavor. Not just doing it, but they relish doing it. And since you brought up Jedi, I can't ever hear a mention of Jedi without throwing this little tidbit in. Luke was on his way to being Jedi bacon.
Yeah.
So I still don't understand completely what Vader meant that he is foreseen you could destroy him unless he was just lying. Because what Luke destroyed was the Emperor's hold on Vader. and brought Anakin back. But Luke
I think the problem with the Force is like anything where you look into the future. We see this in the Dune series as well. You tend to look at possible outcomes, possibilities, things that could happen. And if Luke stood with Vader together, they had enough power to destroy the Emperor. But nobody, not even the Emperor foresaw this, anticipated Luke throwing away his saber and doing the sacrifice play.
Always in motion is the future.
Okay, I ought to give you that one. All right, Steve, what do you think about the torture scene with Bix?
Well, if you don't like Bix, and I'm not really a fan of her, it's fun to watch. But yeah, I have to agree in terms of what it says about the Empire. I think Dedra is less. She's not openly sadistic. I don't think she relishes doing it in the way that somebody like Palpatine does. The way like various Sith Lords that we've seen. I think that she's more feels that this is her duty, and she's prepared to do it whatever it costs because she believes in the Empire. So I mean, I think there's a certain element of true believer with her, maybe even an element of fanaticism in her idea of the Empire. Not to the level of Captain Toole, but enough where she has no problems hurting people to do it. She does give Bix quite a few chances to walk away from it. She really does. I mean, a lot of torture. If they really wanted to torture her, they probably wouldn't be doing that. But Dedra tends to give people at least a couple of chances to walk away and say, "Yeah, do you want to tell me everything before I torture you?" So I will give her that. But she is still a torturer. She is still somebody who goes along with some really horrible Imperial tactics. We see that what this does to her. This messes Bix up, and it does this for several episodes. So I mean, but I think that makes her an interesting villain. I think it sets her apart from a lot of the Imperial officers that we've seen. I mean, she's not like Thrawn, where Thrawn has a problem with doing certain things, and honestly, I think he just likes being artistic about it. So he tries to do things a different way. But Dedra is more like, okay, I'm going to do it by the book, and if the book tells me to torture you, to stop Axis or whatever it is that will help the Empire, I'm more than willing to do it because this is my training, this is what I believe in. So I think that she's an effective villain, I would say. And
she's pragmatic. She's pragmatic in her evil, but I don't know that that's a better thing to be. So.
She's practically ruthless, whereas the Doctor's getting off on it.
That guy is definitely a sadist. Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, he enjoys torturing people and finding novel, innovative ways to torture people. He's I think he considers it almost like an art.
Well, I agree with what you said, fanaticism, but also a commitment to doing what it takes to further the Empire's goals. I think that's really well said, a really good frame as to who she is as a character, but she's definitely interesting. Now, still in this episode, the inciting event is actually twofold. And I really like the way it was written because it was one general event and then it was a very specific personal event. And that was enough to turn Kino to Cassian's side. And again, Cassian's common thread characteristic, at least for me, is that he never gives up. He never gives up, no matter what situation he's in. If you notice, he doesn't exhibit fear. He exhibits, how am I going to get out of this? And that brain of his keeps churning until it comes up with a way.
Yeah,
so
he's also very pragmatic. He's always looking for a way out. He's not succumbing to fear, but a lot of it also is, I recognize that the Empire is in control. I don't have to like it, but I accept that this is the situation I'm in. So I have to make do with the resources that are available to me. And what does he do the entire time he's in prison? He looks for resources, things that he can exploit.
Well, that's one of the things I liked about his introduction to the prison, whereas everybody else is locked down, aren't hands fully laced behind their head. They're looking forward. They're not looking around. He's got his hands way out here, like he's ready to do something. He's constantly being warned because he is scoping out every possibility.
I think that he says it in this episode or a later one, but he basically gives his credo in, I'd rather die hurting them than die giving them what they want.
Precisely.
I think there's something interesting, though, that's happened in this series. I still maintain that this is really 3 separate seasons or 3 separate shows in one. And this last season, this last, group of episodes is the most interesting to me and was what made the series. But it goes all the way back to something Leia said, which is, become a meme, but it's very true, which is, the more you clench your fist, the more star systems will slip through your fingers. Well, it's the same thing here. And we're seeing it with people. We're seeing people have come to the rebellion in different ways. But the more you squeeze a person, you don't know what their breaking point is. And for Cassian, it was the final straw was when he was unjustly imprisoned. He was ready to walk away from the whole thing. Then he was unjustly imprisoned. He's like, screw these guys.
The Empire creates their own enemies, and we've seen that a number of times. And he does it again. They do it again with Cassian.
And here in this episode, we see it with Kino. Kino wasn't willing to stick his neck out, but the last straw was when he realized that hope that he had of getting out was a pipe dream, and then the Empire turned him into a rebel. So it's like, it's this theme that's really well done, and it goes all the way back to the very first Star Wars movie.
I had even pointed this out in an episode of Omen Revelations where we talked about Rogue One, and it's just the way that the Empire works. They squeeze until you have no choice but to turn against them, and this is the problem that they have with their entire methodology and the way that the Sith operate.
And the inciting event I was referring to was there was an incident on level 2.
Yeah.
And no one was sure about what it was at first, and then it came down as a rumor that 100 men had been taken out by the electrified floor, just taken out all at once. For whatever the reason is, that's heinous and that's ugly, and it's kind of chilly to the bone kind of stuff. If they're willing to do that, just take out 100 workers. For what reason? Then we see the older guy that is working on the table basically has a massive stroke, and he's got to be taken out. And then when they do get medical attention, the doctor spills the beans as to what's really happening. And what really happened was they had feigned a release from a prisoner on level 4. They're like, you're out. It's like the end of Shawshank Redemption. Morgan Freeman's walking out the gates. You got a life now. You've been in here 50 years, but, go do what you're going to do. Godspeed to you. Turns out that same prisoner shows back up on level 2 right after his release. And that's what let them know that nobody's getting out. It's a lie. They're going to recycle you back in. Once you're in, there is no release date. And when the men on level 2 figured that out en masse, they just took them out. And so the doctor, when he's treating the older guy that had the stroke, he said, he's dead. Want to make sure he's good and dead. And, first he tells Kino to control Cassian, but then he ends up, talking about what's going on. And it's like, nobody's getting out, not now. That's enough to turn Kino into siding with Cassian. And that's when he finally answers him, never more than 12, fade to black. Just incredible ending. And I agree with what you're saying about the Empire squeezing. But remember, I always reject the language of the oppressor, because the Emperor is the one that called it a rebellion. Vader called it a rebellion. To me, they're freedom fighters, true freedom fighters, because just like browncoats and firefighters, it's the exact same idea. So they
call themselves the Rebel Alliance, so that's kind of where I run with it. But I get your point.
From a certain point of view,
right,
it's a rebellion.
Okay. But the issue is always, what if you don't agree with the dominant regime's policies?
And we see this sort of thing happen again and again in history. We've seen a number of revolutions happen to oppressive regimes. We see this reflected in fiction, because fiction draws from the life we know. In Doom, Baron Harkonnen tells Raban the Beast, like we've got Arrakis again. Now go out there and squeeze them, Raban. Squeeze them for all they're worth. Like, well, the more you squeeze, the harder the Fremen fought back, until their entire hold over Arrakis drew the Emperor's attention, because spice production was being crushed.
Before we move on from this episode, let me throw this out at you guys, because I really want to hear what you have to say about this idea. Is there such a thing as a benevolent dictatorship? Is there such a thing where a regime like the Alliance in Firefly and the Empire in Star Wars could establish galaxy-wide rule and the vast majority of people are okay with it. Is there such a thing?
Could there be, or is there?
Could there be?
I'll take that if you want.
Okay, go.
I will, before you do that, I will say that there are historical precedents where some people would consider it that. The Roman Empire under Augustus, or under the 5 good emperors, maybe like Marcus Aurelius, those kinds of people. But even then, I mean, it is a dictatorship at the end of the day. You're never going to get away from that.
Yeah, it's never going to be anything that lasts.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is like it can be for a majority of the people, perhaps. It all depends on the nature of the ruler and what they're willing to do. But with absolute authority, I mean, you just have the driving problem. It always has to do with human nature, both the ruler and the ruled. The ruler is going to be naturally going to gravitate towards selfish desires. Altruism is a selfish desire to a certain extent in some points. So even things that they do that they think they're doing altruistically, they're doing to serve a purpose. And then the ruled, this is this debate that we have, and this is a very long philosophical debate, but you see it all the time where a lot of Eastern philosophies don't think that people have a natural inclination to want to be free and make their own decisions, versus Western philosophies very much do. And I'm with the Western society, where eventually people are going to just start rankling, even under a benevolent dictatorship. When someone tells them to do something, someone tells you not to smoke, smoking is bad for you. But when someone comes and looks at you and says, you can't do that, your inclination is to go, screw you, I'm going to do it just because I can, So.
Yeah, and part of the problem is it may be a benevolent dictatorship, but how long? Because it's usually not sustainable that way. The minute that, let's say Caligula, who went mad, but before that, people liked him. Even something like that. But also, what happens if, the leader dies and you're replaced with somebody like Nero or Commodus, which has happened historically.
Yeah, it generally can only last as long. It can only last as long as the strong leader. Like once Attila the Hun died, his great empire got sectioned off. The same thing to Alexander the Great. Because those kind of people are like one in a generation. Who can hold those reins of power tightly enough and with enough charisma and will to keep things going. But they're just mortals.
I think the final thing I'd say about dictatorship too is that any autocracy, no matter if it's a dictatorship or if it's a group of people, is predicated on the fact that you have to have the threat of force in order to enforce the dictatorship.
Yeah.
You have to.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is always going to breed discontent eventually. So,
well, my take on it is the wealthy, the higher class people, whoever has resources, is going to use them to curry favor with the dictator. Mm-hmm. Why would you anger the people that can give you the gold or give you the manpower or give you whatever you need to continue your rule?
There's a book, if you ever get a chance, Brandon Sanderson wrote the Mistborn series, and the ruler who everybody is rebelling against in the first book, turns out that he had very good reasons for doing everything he did, but nobody knew what they were. And so instead they just saw a brutal dictator who was oppressing them, Yeah. And so it's interesting to read if you ever get a chance to read it.
Like even in the Dune series, you have Leto II, the God Emperor, who, because of his prescience, he sees a future where humanity has to achieve certain things, and he forcibly achieves that goal. And even though he has a 1,000-year reign of absolute peace, people absolutely hated him because he was an absolute ruler, and his word was law to the point of life and death.
That's the other thing. You're going to end up being Sarah Connor on some level. If you can see things that other people can't see, if you know the end of a thing from the beginning, no one's going to believe you, and people are going to. It's better than that. Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I would say Andor towards the end, I would agree. Andor towards the beginning, not so much.
Okay,
I'm looking forward to comparing and contrasting, because next week we'll be starting Mando.
I was going to say shots fired. We're definitely going to pick that up next week. But if you have any idea of what's coming, you're not going to get people to get with you. They're going to resist you because they'd rather die doing things their way than have you save them. So that's another thing, that as I was going to cry
Yeah,
out.
no, I agree with you 100% on that one. People would rather die on their feet than live on their knees most of the time. So
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 2. Or
Wait. Last
whatever episode we're.
thing on episode 9 is we get the revelation that Vel and Mon Mothma are cousins, that they're related, and they're both feeding
Yeah.
the rebellion, but they're both not willing to talk about it or really disclose the level to which. But one thing you have to, Mon Mothma is sure she's in over her head.
Yeah.
You can see her
Who-
panic level creeping up.
who is this Vel you're talking about? You mean Rebel Karen? So
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about Karen, who cleans up so well you won't recognize her.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so that part was interesting. All right, moving on to episode 10. And episode 10 is entitled One Way Out. And this one is about how we have to go now or it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
We have to make this prison break happen, and we have a very small window. And it's another one of those things where it's almost like a Joker from the Dark Knight level escape. Everything has to happen the way we planned it out, or, it's not really gonna, it all has to come together, or it'll be all or nothing kind of thing. From my point of view, and you guys can disagree, we got a little bit more of main character powers here. And some of the stuff was practical. Some of the stuff was, well, we know you don't die now. So, okay. But that just may be me. And then I guess what amazed me about it the most at the end is that they've got to jump off a cliff and swim for how many miles? And Kino is like, I can't swim. I can't swim, lads. And I'm like, what happens? So, what are you going to do or whatever? I thought that was
Season 2.
yeah, I guess.
What
So.
becomes of Kino?
Yeah,
See, that's
I
when
am a
I'm
little
like,
surprised the Empire didn't have any life preservers.
he's going to
Or
come
like
back
space sharks.
with a sonic claw hand. So this is what happened. But anyway, that's an Avengers joke for y'all that missed that. But anyway, so in terms of the actual
Avengers 2 joke.
conflict and how they fought their way out, even if it was sometimes over the top, I liked seeing it. I liked viscerally them just blasting jokers left and right, them getting the angles, getting the corners, and the Empire realizing their fatal flaw, which is if we cannot psychologically keep them caged, we can't literally keep them caged. And they figured out how to basically storm the control room, which again was reminiscent of A New Hope. That's one of the best scenes in A New Hope when they're actually in there and Han's got to pretend to be a stormtrooper and he's making up stuff. That was hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
But another situation where they, this is how I look at Andor. It's not typical Star Wars, technically the type of project the fanboys have been wanting for a very, very long time, even before.
True.
I agree with
Very
that.
true.
That's fairly fair.
I think at the end, this is very true. I think there's it's uneven at times, but yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that for the most part. So.
And so this shows why the Empire was panicking and murdered the 100 people on level 2 because they didn't want the rest of the prisoners understanding there just aren't enough guards to withstand an attack if you unite. And so that's exactly what happens here. And they actually make it. I love the fact that they're, chanting, one way out, one way out. I like that. I like how the men kind of en masse got courage and said the same thing that Andor said, is like, we're going to do this and we're going to die trying. I just enjoyed the whole thing. So I want to hear you guys' thoughts. Give me your thoughts on how you reacted to the prison break proper. Start with Bracing.
You mentioned that the men all gain courage, and it's interesting psychologically speaking, because we tend to react in two different ways. We tend to react as individuals, and we can also react as a group, a mob, or a mass. And fear is very contagious. There's that famous line from Men in Black when Kay is talking to Jay and tells him, you can talk to an individual, but people are a scared herd animal.
You mean Suge Smith? So
Yeah, Shook Smith. And people can also get
No, you didn't.
Yeah, you did. Hey, let me show you this window over here. Anyway,
I'm
let
sorry.
me. But people can also be rallied into action and anger and courageousness. And usually, all it takes is just tipping that one domino, that one person. It's like when the announcement goes off that the floors are cold, everybody's waiting until that first person steps on the floor to test it, and then they all come charging out of the cells. Uh, and I just love this. It felt very kind of escape from Alcatraz, but on a much larger scale to me. You know, the Clint Eastwood classic. I loved a lot of the setup. The thought of shorting out the floor using the coolant leak, uh,
Yes.
stacking up all the pieces of hurlable ammo on their tables, knowing that they were going to be fighting hand to hand against blasters. And yet, even though there's obviously, like you said, some main character powers, I thought a lot of it played out very realistically. We see a great many people get killed, and the way they handled things felt pretty genuine. The way they had to scramble up the broken lifts to try and get up there and deal with the two snipers, and a lot of people got shot trying to take them out. And characters that you'd gotten to know within the context of the prison, we see them get murked left and right. So there's some genuine stakes here. The only person you're not worried about is Cassian Andor because we've all seen Rogue One. But even
And
that,
Melshi as well.
yeah, I mean, there's enough people in there that were like, like, oh man, I was waiting for Kino to bite it. I was waiting for a couple of these other guys to bite it, and some of them did. So there's still some stakes, but it was pretty glorious. It felt like you kind of needed this sort of moment. You've seen the oppression of the empire, and it's getting tighter and tighter. They're getting more and more involved, especially because of the efforts of Luthien out there, which is forcing their hand, which is what he wants to do. He wants to force their hand because the oppression will build resistance and rebellion. And here, however many of these people escape, some will escape out into the woodwork, but some will go like, it's like the one guy says at the end, it was Mel. She's like, somebody's got to tell somebody about all this. And so this was a really uplifting episode for me. Even with everything that went wrong and everything they did manage to achieve, and seeing the little guys can overcome the big guys because they've gotten complacent in that sort of way. So it was very exciting, and I was all about it. I felt really good after this episode.
I agree with all that. Steve, what do you think about the Prison Break?
Well, I was thinking for a while about this quote from Daredevil Born Again. A man without hope is a man without fear. And I think that this is basically what the Empire did. They took away all hope of getting out. So their only hope that they can get out is by creating that hope themselves, by fighting up and standing up. And I think you definitely see a lot of that, particularly with Kino. And honestly, I mean, it was obvious from the beginning they were not going to let him out. And as a digression, I will say, I think they were trying to silence the people that were working, so they wouldn't go out and tell everyone what they were doing. And that's, I think that becomes clear when you see how Milshi goes out and says that.
Let me see what that says.
Yeah,
and fellas, prequel fan, yeah, I can understand that as well. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and I think beyond that, I got a Spartacus vibe from this entire thing. The movie Spartacus. Yeah, and I will say when Star Wars is really on fire, it's because they take the right influences from the right classic movies and turn it into something Star Wars. And that, I think they definitely did that. You definitely see Prison Break movies in the past. You definitely see things like Spartacus, even though these are not gladiators, the way that they escape and the way that they learn to fight back is in much the same way as Kirk Douglas leading the slave rebellion. And honestly, there's something Kubrickian about this whole episode and this whole setting, which I really just find really, really interesting. I'm visually, it does have that 2001 look as well as the THX as a look as well. And so because of that, I think that all of that comes together, and you start to see this larger picture of what a jailbreak is in this world. And yeah, there's main character powers, and there's also, okay, we know that these guys survived because we saw them in Rogue One. That's fine. But at the same time, I like that they think out their escape route. They've taken all the information that they picked up and they decide, okay, we're going to go and break the water main over here. We're going to make sure that elevator stops halfway through so we don't get killed. They're putting all this thought into it. And yeah, you lose a bunch of people, including people that were at the work table. And it's kind of sucks when you see them die. And it hurts especially to see Kino say, I'm not going to be able to make it because I can't swim. Minus the whole thing of why don't they have life preservers, but whatever. The whole thing really, it's exciting. The way the action comes across really, really works. You feel, that these people, it is chaotic because these people have not really learned to fight as any kind of organized force except for Cassian. But he's able to teach them what he knows so that at least him and his close-knit group, have some preparation. And so, and you start seeing that they really are relying on strength of numbers as opposed to any kind of skilled resistance. And because of that, and because people are able to, take the guns out of the Imperials that they take down, and they have that advantage, it is reasonably believable that they're able to get out. And even though there are points where you could say, okay, if these people run by somebody competent, they would be having problems. So I felt that it really, really worked.
That was like 5,000 to 500. And if I can address one point you had, I forgot to mention this. When you talked about, like, if you take away hope, you lose fear. And the whole time we've had this carrot stick of the days counting down, the number of shifts counting down on the wall. And that great moment where, like, Andy Serkis is going through this whole thing and he turns like, the wall, the shift count doesn't matter. We're not getting out of here. Then, like, everybody gets on the same page. I already consider myself dead.
It was funny watching the pseudo Vader, poor man's Vader sounds when he's making the announcements, and also wise of Cassian and Kino to shut down the hydropower, because them ramping back up, it was going to really slow down the operation and cost them a lot of time and resources to get it back up where it was. And then all the free labor was going now with the prison break. So I thought that was smart too. I thought that was a deeper way to push the knife in, if you will, that we're not just leaving, but we're going to cripple your operations. Mm-hmm. It's going to cost you big time to get it back to where it was. Nims, what do you think about the prison break?
Yeah, I thought it was well done. It rang true to me. The only quibble I would have as far as the action goes is that all of these criminals, and for all we know, most of these guys were jaywalking, given that the Empire was throwing you in for looking dirty. They throw you in prison for 25 years, mm-hmm. And then suddenly they're all commandos storming, this prison. So there was that, but I can let that slide because I can, and it made for a better viewing. The thing that I wanted to say and that Steve brought up was movies. This whole scene, one of the things I love is well-written scores that go along with movies, and so while John Williams is the king of Star Wars, obviously, this reminded me of a score that James Horner wrote for a movie, and in fact, it reminded me of a scene from one of my favorite movies, which was the scene at the end of Glory. And if they had taken that music where they're storming that fort and put it over this fight, it would have been truly, truly epic. It was amazing. Luckily, fiction is kinder than real life, because at the end of Glory, if you've seen the movie, everybody is wiped out and they don't take the
spoilers, man, for an old film.
They don't take that.
I want to add one quick thing, though, if you don't mind. I will point out that this entire scenario really builds the goodwill of the audience, and because you have that goodwill, you're able to forgive a lot more. And so, the things that we brought up as criticisms, the main character powers and whatnot, we don't care because we want to see them get out. We want to see Cassian get out and do the next thing. And because of that, you really are kind of with the characters and you're with the story, and that makes it more palatable.
Sorry.
We inherently want to see the good guys win and see the bad guys get punished.
But I will say that like that movie, we were talking a little bit about before about how fiction imitates history. Same thing here, you know, well, that was a fictional account of real history, but it's the same psychology there. So that when Matthew Broderick's character gets killed and then up stands Denzel's character and he gets shot, but he refuses to go down. I mean, at that point, those guys that were on that hill knew we're going to die one way or the other. So we might as well die taking out some of those SOBs up there. And then they went for it, you know, and that's exactly what you got going on here. And it's true life psychology, which is why this scene is so powerful for us. Because
they even have a great line in the episode where he's like, it's like, I'm already dead. I'm already dead. Like Cassian tells like, be sure to fight before you die. You know, take some suckers out with you.
That's the general theme again, and I think they did it well, and I think they did it smartly. I think that's what I like the most. That it was thought through, and even though the whole thing hinged on whether or not the water main was actually going to break or not, I love that part too, by the way, because it didn't feel like it was a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
So,
and
like,
so
go ahead.
Yeah, and so like when I said that, you know, some of these criminals, you know, Lord knows what they're in there for, but all of a sudden they've all got commando skills, which they're just picking up random weapons and they can fire and hit everything better than any stormtrooper ever could. But you know what?
You know what?
You don't care because you got the goodwill.
Yeah, I'm going to let it go.
Goodwill, so well, you don't care.
We also don't know, like, you know, Cassie's been playing this stuff since day one, even against Kino's wishes. You know, like, we've seen this building up. And for all we know, he was finding out who could do what. And he made sure these are the guys who are going to be the first in the weapons rooms. Like, okay, you get a blaster, you get a blaster, you stick with the pipe wrench, you get a blaster, you get a blaster. You pick up one of those shock rods, you get a blaster, you know.
Is Cassie and the
Everybody gets a blaster.
Apple Winfrey and blasters. You get a blaster. You get a blaster.
Everybody gets a blaster. Now, in the midst of this incredible sequence, which we all love, there's this other kind of thing going on. And it's also one of the things that makes you just, I will say, enjoy Luthen's character. I won't say that you have to like him. But the thing about him, for me, is that, how can I put this? He's a connector person. And this is what I mean by that. You see the cows, and then you go to the deli, and you see the cuts of meat. But you don't want to see the slaughterhouse. The average person, because my dad used to work in the slaughterhouse, the average person does not want to be around or see or even understand what a slaughterhouse is. Because there's nothing good about a slaughterhouse. It's nasty. Nasty from stem to stern, quite literally. That, to me, is where Luthen lives. He lives in a slaughterhouse. He's the guy that sees the cows, and he's the guy that sees we want to get to the deli cuts of meat, but he understands what has to be done to make it happen. And from my point of view of history, real life history, it's those people that are the unsung heroes, those people that will be vilified, those people that people will be disgusted by because what they were willing to do. But you don't have the deli cuts without people like Luthen. That's my
remember Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men, his epic rant that gets him convicted. But he's like, "You want me on that wall? You need me on that wall."
That's right. That's right. Well,
this is my favorite, one of my favorite kinds of characters, which is that guy that is really smart and is really determined, you know, to succeed in his goal no matter what it takes, even if it means sacrificing his whole soul. He is knowingly doing bad things for what he considers to be a good reason. Those kinds of characters fascinate me. Like, you may not like them or may not like what they do, but you respect them because they're competent. They know what they're doing. They know what the stakes are. They know what the risks are. And they have decided based on that calculation that, you know, the best way to move forward is if I sacrifice who I am and, you know, and operate in this dark space. I just feel like those kinds of characters are really complex and interesting.
Well, to me, it speaks to the fact that life is not black and white. Life is continually different shades along the spectrum, because I refuse to say shades of gray. Life is different shades across the spectrum.
50 shades?
Anyway, so, but the thing about it is that very few people can deal with that. They want the deli cuts. They want the cellophane wrapped meat with the fat trimmed off, and they want it that way, but they don't want to see the price you have to pay. And Luthen lives in that space.
This
the sunless space.
This is a hell of a tangent, but if you've ever seen Dirty Jobs of Mike Rowe, that's what that whole series is about. All the people doing all those jobs that we don't want to know about, but if they didn't do them, we wouldn't get all the nice shiny stuff. So
well, a whole lot of people don't understand that the reason we have medical science breakthroughs is because of grave robbers. But that's another conversation. But anyway, so
watch Burke in here if you get the chance.
The complicated backstory with Krieger is a leader of a rebel cell. One of his pilots gets captured by the ISB, and then he gets assassinated, but it's set up to look like an accident. And then they have another ruse to make it look like the ISBs were investigating that in case the rebels are watching the whole thing, which is what Luthen was talking about last week, which is no merch, some sequels, no 1 to 6 nothing character.
Emo Ren and
Mary Wren. I want to throw up and cry. That's a whole episode right there. So thank you for that comment, because we actually need to deal with Gary Nerdrotic talks about that all the time, and so does
Store, not story.
Midnight's Edge, about how the toys don't sell. But anyway,
I will say I would buy a Luthen Rail figure. I know there is one coming.
I will say real quick comment on that. When my own kids asked me why I was so upset with what they did to Luke in the postquels, you know, whatever the episode 7, whatever, I was like, I've done something wrong.
So anyway, so that's when Luthen realizes that he realizes the conundrum, that if they tip their hand that they know what's going on, then the Empire is going to know that they know. If they don't tip their hand, that's going to cost Krieger and his people their lives. And he makes a decision that, well, that's what we need to do to keep this thing going. And so anyway, he meets with his inside man, which is Lonnie, Reverend Lonnie Love. No, that's not his name. But anyway, that's a joke from Martin. So anyway, he meets with his inside man, Lonnie, and they have this incredible conversation on the headphones, in the elevator, all different kind of stuff. And Luthen is laying this out to him.
Man, what a scene that was.
It really was like, you know, you have to stay where you are. I've groomed you. I've trained you. I've prepped you to be our inside man. You can't quit now. And you need to understand why you can't quit. And I don't care if you don't like it, because this is a sacrifice you signed up for. And we have to sacrifice Krieger, and it's going to be a slaughter and all that. And it's heart-wrenching, it's gut-wrenching, but it's still an accurate assessment of the wartime strategy, because if they tip the Empire off, everything changes.
I just love how Lonnie asked him, like, what's your cost? And like he lays it out, and he's like, I'm in hell. I have, you saying like you're giving up this, you're living a double life, you're stressed, you're afraid all the time. You got this new daughter to worry about. He said, like, I've given up any chance of a life, any chance of peace, any chance of, lasting connections, friendship, family. I have given up everything, and I've given up my soul. He doesn't finish. I thought he was going to say this line. He's like, I look down and I can't see the ground I'm standing on. I was waiting for him to finish saying, like, because I'm standing on corpses, or I'm standing in blood, or I'm standing in piles of bones, because he knows the trail he's left behind. But he also knows this price is worth paying, because he's seen what the Empire is capable of. And there's going to be more and worse if he doesn't do this. And I like when he brings us to Saw Gerrera. Saul considers, and he's like, what would you call it? I would call it war, because Saul gets him.
That's right. I agree with Steve. That's what makes Luthen so fascinating. And so
you're good, my man. You're good.
I don't know. Yeah, no, Debbie, we're loving these comments, man. Keep them coming.
Yeah,
but, definitely.
I will say, just a real quick editorial comment. I don't want to take up a lot of time because we got other things we got to go to. But the far future part of Luthen's story, though, is that 60, 70 years down the road, when people find out what he's done, he'll be vilified. Yeah. He'll be portrayed as evil. His statues will be torn down. He'll be ripped out of the history books. Because that's what we do. Instead of appreciating what they had to do to make it happen, they'll be set up as the fall guy. That's the evil person.
Think about Mata Hari, who had to give her body to German officers to pass intel along to the French resistance. And like how disgusting that must have been for her. What a sacrifice that was for her physically and emotionally to do things. Like we have people who have done this very sort of thing in history. And sometimes they're not remembered at all, or they're not remembered well. But we did need that guy on the wall. And
That's what I'm saying. It's the
DT.
slaughterhouse concept.
wasn't like the most Batman thing Luthen's done so far? Just like him on the catwalk.
Think about this.
I will say I watched this entire
Cape
episode, thinking, okay, yeah, they're trying to build how tough the Empire is and how the Empire is getting stronger and all that. And I think I knew the entire time Luthen's got something coming. He's got an ace in the hole somewhere. And then you hit this scene, and then you realize, yeah, Luthen's been ahead of them the entire time.
Just last comment real quick on what Jeff was saying was that think about this country. The only spy that we venerate in this country is Nathan Hale. I have but one life to give for my country. You know why we venerate him? The man got caught and said a nice line, but he wasn't a good spy. So,
and
good spies you never hear about.
The other thing in this episode, which I don't know what they were trying to say. I don't know what the point of it was. Maybe more about Mon Mothma. I don't know. But long story short, she meets with Davo, and he's the guy that basically can hook up all the banking connections and allow her to move the money, to cover up the money that she's moved, to access even more money to fund the rebellion, and to do it on the low so Mon Mothma doesn't get exposed. And that's what she's panicking about, because she's about 2 seconds from being investigated by their version of the IRS. So she really needs Davo, and he knows that. But the price is him.
Very Game of Thrones.
Such a clever price.
Hooking up his son with her daughter. And what the episode tells you, and it pays off later, is that the daughter, for all intents and purposes, is down with that.
Yeah.
And Mon Mothma, along with Cousin Vale, can't stand the idea of it.
Well, it's because
I'm not sure
they're elitist.
But I'm not sure what the episode was trying to say. Like, is it wrong to bargain to make an alliance? Because this is the other Bolin girl. This is just about every regime in history. This is in the Bible, big time. The Bible did this big time when you look at the kings of Israel and all that, and the strategic marriages they had to create alliances with other cultures.
Yeah, that's been a power play forever.
Right. So this is not a new move, but I was trying to understand what this show was trying to say about it. Are we supposed to side with the daughter as a traditionalist? Are we supposed to side with Mon Mothma being reviled that your youth and beauty is a bargaining tool? And this whole thing, and this man is using that connection to, get me what I need. But the thing that struck me the most about Mon Mothma is that she seemed to think it wasn't going to be any price. That's the thing that just kind of threw me off. I'm like, you didn't think this was going to cost you anything?
Well, she thought it was going to be monetary.
Well, she's like I said before. I think she's an elitist, just like Vel is, and Rebel Karen, and the two of them didn't think they were going to have to get their finery dirty, and it's like, no, before this is all over, you're going to have to get down in the mud with Luthen. You're going to have to get in bed.
You made a vow. You got to follow through with it.
You're going to get into bed with some nasty people. And unfortunately,
Luthen warned
it looks like your daughter's going to get
yes.
in bed with the nasty person's son. So,
Luthen did warn her time and time again. She should have seen it was coming, but she thought she could play the game and somehow stay clean. But you can't get down in the mud without getting dirt on you.
That's right. Nobody does. But the juxtaposition of the idea of the traditional ways of their people, and because the daughter is doing the chanting and doing the talking and meeting with the group of basically, young virgin girls who is down with the arranged marriages.
Mm-hmm.
There are still cultures now in 2023 that do arranged marriages, and Americans that just shriek and read and blah, 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 blah. So Mon and Vel struck me like, the strong independent who had been fighting, women who had been fighting all their lives to get away from those kinds of traditions. and Mon Mothma was completely miserable in her marriage, only to find out that your daughter believes in it, and she's good with it.
I think there's a couple ways to look at it. I think most of that traditional thing and all that is just a lens that we're looking at a larger concept about, which is this is rebellion. This is a fight, and the stakes are so high that you're going to get dirty and things are going to be sacrificed, and you know what? No one's going to be above the fray. I think that's the general theme, and I think it's well written that way. I think the other thing is, Mon thinks she's going to be this force for change, and she doesn't want to do this to her kids and everything, and maybe she's coming to find out that some of these systems stay in place for reasons other than people just wanting to oppress people. You've got political games going on and all this other stuff. So
what's Vel's girlfriend's name again?
Oh,
Cinta.
I can't remember.
Cinta. Well, Cinta pretty much put it out there, and Mon, she hasn't quite come to that understanding yet. It's like the fight is everything. Anything else that happens, be grateful for that. And Mon's going to have to get to the point, because like when we see her in Star Wars, we don't see a husband, we don't see a daughter, we don't see anything of that around her. So you can judge by that she does end up losing everything in order to win the freedom of the galaxy.
What is that line
I think
from
Mon
Cersei?
sacrifices her entire family. That's what I think.
What's that line from Cersei Lannister, who I can't believe I'm going to quote her, but it was like, when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die or something like that. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, she basically tells Ned, oh, I'm going to give you the chance to do the honorable thing, and she warns him, was like, that's not how the game is played, bro.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. And so if you think about it, Mon is kind of getting off light because she's getting it like in stages instead of Ned. Ned was stupid. I love Ned Stark, but Ned was an idiot. So and he lost his head because of it. So,
I mean, you can aspire, you can respect his morality, but it's like he didn't know how to play the game, and
absolutely.
In that context, you die. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Plus, this I
told
will
Robert
say,
to go screw himself. So,
this I will say, and I've said it basically my whole life, but that is that what amazes me is how people can justify the same behavior with a semantic change. So they'll do something, but if they change the language around it, then they like to pretend that it is a difference in kind when it is actually a difference in name only. And so you can call arranged marriages whatever you want to call them, but they are arranged marriages, but they are political, they are financial, they are status-based. For some people, it's keeping a bloodline pure. For some people, it's like you said, if they're elitist, they feel like, because everybody wants the Jasmine Aladdin story, that the princess falls in love with the street rat. But what if the princess is like, no, I want to marry my class. What's wrong with that?
I guess the reason I said that Mom was elitist was, at least at the beginning. Now, I don't think she wanted her daughter to go into an arranged marriage, but she seemed to be much more upset about the fact that she was going to have to associate with someone who was of a lower status, someone that she preferred not to solely.
I mean, like she calls him a thug, and so I was expecting some like Han Solo looking character coming off the streets, somebody out of Jabba's palace, and this dude looks as good as anybody in her inner circle. And I was like, oh, well, that's an interesting
I think she just didn't like the fact that he was a criminal bankster.
Yeah.
Again,
but still, that's like
understandable, but you have to make sacrifices.
Yeah, but I'm still amazed at her naivete and not understanding that. Maybe she did think she was just going to be able to cut a check or do a favor or go into the favor bank, maybe. But it got real deep real fast.
Yeah. Put that in the chat for us so everybody watching the video could see it. Definitely. Give us that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Sure. So let's move on to episode 11, the penultimate episode.
Yeah, sometimes you got to lay down with the scruffy nerve further. So,
And it's called Daughter of Ferrix. Now, this was another really interesting perspective in terms of, I will say, the epitaph of your life, how you want to go out, how you want to be remembered, how whatever kind of impact you made or left behind. And it was just like that scene in First Night. I don't know if you saw First Night with Sean Connery and Richard Gere.
Yeah.
Yes.
But basically, you know,
Yep.
Richard Gere's Lancelot, and so him and Guinevere hook up, and so that breaks Arthur's heart, and so it looks like he's beaten. Almost at the end, he gets down on one knee and he says, "I command you all to fight." Then he took 8 arrows, but he's like, "Fight!" And I loved it. It was that kind of thing with Marva. So, long story short, Cassian's mom has died, but because she is an elitist or upper class or a daughter of ferrets, she's in that cadre. She's also upper crust, if you will.
She was a former leader. She was
Okay.
former high
Yeah,
ranking
I think the Daughters of Ferrix are kind of like the Daughters of the American Revolution, that kind of a group.
leader.
It's, you know, one of these people that has been around a while. Sure, class is not like huge. I mean, we see her living conditions. They're not that great. But what she is respected, you know, because of how long she's been around, how long she's been part of that society, her having a strong voice, you know, for Ferrix. So I think it's a question of her having earned that status rather than, you know, inheriting it like Mon did.
Now, I agreed. What I was saying was that she was a woman of distinction. That was my point.
Right.
But
right,
also,
right.
it reminded me a lot of Padme and Leia, because Marva was willing to fight for her people, fight for her town, fight for what she believed. She didn't care who didn't like that. And that's how she distinguished herself, by basically being to the wall for her own people and being willing to do whatever was necessary, because both Padme and Leia ended up making sacrifices just on a different level, because, you know, Leia never really recovered from losing Alderaan. They don't focus on it a lot in the movies, but if you read any of the books, you know, how could that not haunt you? You know, watching your entire home planet be destroyed. That's also Superman's thing, him, you know, having survivor's guilt and all that. So anyway, I just liked, on the scale that Marva did it, I just liked her. She was just, you know, a tough person, and she went out, you know, on some level on her own terms, and she had the last laugh and she had the last say with a post-mortem hologram. I love that. I love stuff like that. I love when people are laughing at you from the grave.
She
Once
was
again-
so old that she just stopped caring. Like, I don't care what anybody does to me. I don't care, you know, what the Empire does. I'm just too old for this crap. And I love that. She's great. She's like a Lana Tyrell.
Just like the last episode reminded me of the End of Glory, that hologram of Marva gave me flashbacks, different mood, but flashbacks to the scene at the end of Inglourious Bastards in the cinema, you know, where, so I was half expecting that to happen, where things just start blowing up everywhere or something. So,
Well, the thing that got me about it is, like, when I saw, like, oh, Marva died off scene, because I kept expecting her to go out in some sort of rebel blaze of glory. And I thought the show was taking.
She kind of did, in a way.
She did, though. That's the thing.
Follow me. I thought the show was taking a big misstep, because you don't have this sort of thing happen off camera. You don't kill a main character off camera like that, like, you know, wasting Bryan Cranston in the first Godzilla movie, things like that. But then when the hologram comes up, I was like, oh, okay, this is what they set up all that for. So now, Rian Johnson, pay attention. That's how you subvert expectations and pay it off.
That's
Not
right.
some Last Jedi bullshit.
Now, D2 Emo is basically losing his droid mind, which this time I thought it was a little over the top, because the droid grieving, I don't know, 3PO kind of more like whined and worried. He was a worrier. But B2 Emo here is just like, can't function. You know?
He's living up to his name.
Yeah, he doesn't want to peek over his little turtle shell, and I don't want to be alone. I want Marva. And it was actually some pretty deep emotions for a droid.
Yeah.
I was like, huh.
it is kind of weird, huh? It's like they crossed the AI nexus there into some other.
Every now and then,
I think he
Star
just
Wars,
doesn't know what to do with himself. You know,
You
what is my purpose now?
every now in Star Wars, you do have droids who do cross into that more emotional sort of barrier. They go beyond their programming, and they really become sort of people. Now you think about, like,
I'm guessing he didn't get too many memory wipes from Marvel.
yeah, and that's what happened. That's one of the reasons they periodically memory wipe the droids, because you don't want them to develop into a true AI.
Yeah, we had that discussion, I think, at episode 1 or 2 of The Mandalorian about some of the droids there and stuff. So
Yeah, but whoever built R2 programmed him with snark, That's the snarkiest robot in the galaxy. But anyway, so another thing to put on my writer's hat for a minute, another thing that I love because it was so weird was bricking.
I thought bricking was really cool.
When you die and you get cremated, and then they turn your ashes into a brick, a literal brick with your name on it, and then you become a part in your, cremated post-mortem state of, the wall of the town. I thought that was just kind of a brilliant stroke from a writing point of view because it's so distinctive. And it's just so weird, but it's like you're never gone. Your ashes are right there, except you get bricked.
That was a really neat cultural touch.
Yes.
Let me check this out. So this is just real quick. And for everyone out there watching, either in the chat or in the comments down below this on YouTube, give us your own rankings on the films. So let us know.
Awesome. So of course, and we again see Cinta, and we kind of understand her assignment is just to be posted there and kind of watch what's going on. And maybe that's why she's, so testy and so bitter, because she's like, this is going to be my life now, and I have to give up everything I might have wanted to do, at least for the time being. But it's like, at her funeral, some stuff going to go down. And I'm like, going to be some explosions. It's going to be politicized. Everybody's going to see it as a window to accomplish whatever their agenda is. And I like that too. I like stuff like that. I like the buildup. I like when it's coming, but you want to see how it plays out.
Yeah, both sides are clearly going to use this event to their advantage, politically and ideologically, one way or another.
So they set everything up for the funeral, but this was another instance for me of where the maybe indigenous people is not the right word, the hometown people, the homegrown folks, those people, because the larger regime doesn't respect their customs because they look down on them, because they see them as lesser people, they're able to pull some stuff off that you didn't see coming, because you keep thinking that so-called superior firepower or superior intelligence will save the day, but that's the hole they use to destroy your little plans. So, like I said, you knew it was going to be some explosions or whatever. But here's my thing. I don't think I've ever seen a bigger main character powers scene than Kazan himself coming back. The whole setup is they're like, he's going to come back because it's his mama and we'll be ready for him. And then he saves Bix and he gets away. They're hanging out on the transports, kind of laughing about the next move. And I'm like, that was a little bit of a bridge too far for me. So I want to hear what
I'm just like, Cassian, how stupid are you coming back to this? I mean, you should know that there's a trap waiting for you. Marvel told you not to come back. Why are you coming back?
It's a trap.
So real quick here, we have a request from Derpy to just look at his rankings for the movies and just give us a quick comment what we think. So let's see. What do we got? Last Jedi he's last. Return of the Sith, or next to last. Solo, was that? AOC. Attack of the Clones.
Force Awakens. Phantom Menace. Rogue One.
I think I put I personally put Rogue One above Return of the Jedi, but that's just me. Yeah. Rogue One, New Hope.
10 is The Rise of Skywalker, because 2 is Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah. Okay.
It's Last Jedi, yeah.
Yeah, Revenge of the Sith is good. I might have moved
I hate Rise of Skywalker a little bit more because it's so stupid, but I totally get why people hate The Last Jedi.
Yeah, I might have put Revenge of the Sith below New Hope just for nostalgia's sake for me. And I don't think you can go wrong doing Empire #1.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Empire is still the best.
That's right. Star Wars was about a galactic conflict. Empire made it about the Skywalkers.
Yeah.
So, it definitely did change the franchise forever.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good list. You know, I personally would quibble with a few things, and I'd only move a few movies like up or down one. So I think it's pretty good.
So in this coming on, so I will repeat what I have said for at least 3 episodes now. I don't understand why these people don't know how to be Ethan Hunt. How can you not get a disguise? Can you cut your hair off? Can you dye your hair? Can you put on a mustache? Can you put on a beard? Can you wear shoes that make you look taller? Can you do something where you're not just walking around with your face and you're an intergalactically wanted criminal? I don't understand why that.
Star Wars level of disguise is always putting your hood up.
Yeah, I guess
that's disguise in Star Wars. Like
I guess
Jedi's, Luthans, like everybody, like hoodies. Hoodies are your disguise.
So
Yeah.
in what we knew was going to happen. Now let me tell you what I thought was going to happen.
Unless
Hey, at
you're
least-
Sam Wessel.
At least Kylo
can
Ren
change
threw
your
a mask on, so you know.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, there is Leia being the bounty hunter, and you know, Lando
Jedi.
playing it,
Jedi, yeah.
and Sam Wessel who could actually change her looks, but most people would.
So
I will also call bullshit if you're riding a space motorcycle. A hood is not going to stay up, Luthen. I don't care how cool your Batman powers are.
So I loved the way they set it up. Let me tell you what I thought was going to happen. If this had been Return of the Jedi, then B2 Emo would have shot a lightsaber to somebody. It would have been on. What I thought was going to happen was that B2 Emo was going to explode. I thought he was the bomb. I was actually kind of hoping he was the bomb because it would be.
Yeah. Kylo Ren forever is now Emo Vader. So
Emo Vader.
Yeah.
Because it would have been a great way for him to go out, a great way for him to, you know,
Revan knockoff.
and definitely something Marvel would have
Doc
endorsed
Emo.
because B2 Emo didn't want to live without Marvel anyway. So I thought he was going to be the bomb that took everything out. But anyway, the explosions came from.
I thought so too. I was expecting the droid to blow up.
I just thought this is the perfect setup. I thought that's what's going to happen.
Yep.
So
I mean, he
now-
was out front and everything. I was waiting for that to happen.
Did y'all see that Darth Emo is finding dinosaurs? Sorry for the tangent there, but his new movie, he's fighting dinosaurs in the past. So
Yeah.
sorry.
Yep, don't care. So what did you guys think about that whole sequence? I loved every part of it. I'm gonna let Steve deal with Captain Tool and his love interest to cover his life, whose life he saves, and they breathing heavy. But I'm gonna let Steve handle that one. But so what did you think about that whole sequence where you know, they caught them off guard and they're fighting and they're not just gonna lay down and let the Empire take their town? What'd you think about all that?
You're asking me first, or?
No, Nims and Bracy go first, and then I'll let you talk.
Okay.
about
Okay.
it.
Does everybody seem to be a little quiet?
I'm busy
Right, yeah.
burning my hand real quick.
I mean, I thought he said you two first, Steve.
Yeah, you
Yep.
know, that whole scene, I thought it was good. You know, I think it's I was a little confused. I thought that they were gonna cut the series when they escaped, or that we would have more of him trying to get off planet or something like that. So, but once I thought about it, him going back to the planet made sense for a number of reasons, because they had loose ends they had to tie up. And then the way that they did the rebellion and them rising up against all this, it made sense. You know, I think it was a little condensed. I felt like they had to rush all of the events a little bit because they only had 2 episodes left. But at the same time, the Empire, we haven't seen it on screen, but the Empire has been squeezing these people for a while. And they did tell us that. So even though they didn't show us it a lot, they told us about all of the stuff the Empire has been doing. So, and they'd earned enough goodwill for me by this point that I was willing to let it go. So I thought the whole thing worked out pretty well, and I liked them taking up arms. I think if I had one quibble, the only thing I wanted, it was just, I want the Empire to be completely ruthless so that you have to have a military structure to take them down. I don't want to see stormtroopers getting taken down or swarmed or everything. I want to see them mowing people down, and just, I want to see that massacre that we heard about of other species, you know? So it's like, you know, and that would be the only quibble I'd have. But other than that, I think it was good. So I think it was well done.
Okay, Bracy.
Yeah, I do agree with Nim on that point.
Yes.
The the weapons they were using did not have the rate of fire of some other Star Wars heavy weapons. You know, they didn't have basically the heavy machine gun or even the light machine guns. Basically, the guys were using the blaster rate of fire is about like it feels like once every other second or so, and even the big mounted gun, it wasn't popping off that fast. It just hit really hard. So I do feel like we should have lost a lot more people. But it was nice seeing like in a more realistic sort of fashion, a lot of people getting taken out in the streets. Because again, here we have people basically trying to do the Ewok fight far less successfully. And I you know, the first time I saw the Ewok fight, it was kind of charming and kind of fun. But at the same time, I was like, we should see a lot more dead Ewoks. And Lucas just did not want to kill the teddy bears. So I'm glad Rogue One is in a setting where we're a lot more willing to kill off people because this is war. And we get to see that. And I do like, I thought the setup to explain how some of this stuff wasn't as bad as it could have been is that Deidre said no snipers because the whole point is to try and take Cassian and or Axis alive. So she didn't bring out as much firepower as they had. And again, we see the complacency of the Empire, just like in the prison. We think psychological warfare, a minimum amount of force is all we need. We're making a show of force. You know, we basically got our rolling little APC here. We've got actual stormtroopers roaming around. That's scary with their skull-like armor, stuff like that. And so they've gotten used to getting their own way so long. They're not prepared for an actual uprising, and that cost them. And I did like when stuff goes down, that even Deidre is completely caught off guard, and like she's in a scramble and a panic and thinking she's going to get curb stomped or die or get shot in the face and all these other things. And it's only Lieutenant Toole to the rescue that manages to save her. I was like, oh, so this is what you've been building up to with this guy all season. Okay. So, all right, let's see where this goes season 2. But it was kind of funny to see how that played off. But thinking in my own terms, as I'm sure Nim does, being ex-military, as soon as the Marvel hologram starts talking that smack against the Empire, and I'm one of those commanders down there, I'm like, shoot the droid. You know, let's snip this off. Let's not let her build her William Wallace speech, please. We can all see where this is going. Shoot the droid. Let people know that we're willing to shoot things, and maybe you'll settle your biscuits down, right? But other than that, like a lack of common sense on the Empire's part, I thought the scene played out well. And again, it was like a lot like the Prison Break. I want to see them succeed because they are the oppressed. They are the underdog. We all love to see a good underdog story. We like to see people fight back against tyranny and oppression. We like to see the bad guys get curb stomped. And, you know, this was pretty feel good again. And this leads very much in, you know, the whole arc of Cassian Andor leads into A New Hope. And so here we see hope rising. So I like the metaphor of all this leading to A New Hope.
All right, Steve, I'm going to let you talk about the most epic love story.
Yes. Do it, Steve. Do
Wait a minute. Hold on. Before we do that, set against a rebellion in a small mining town, 2 star-crossed lovers will meet in a story that transcends the ages.
All I can say is thank God.
A big voice guy.
Captain Toole and Deidre in a forbidden love. Hold on.
I'll tell you the truth.
Literally star-crossed.
If those two had kissed when he saved her, I wasn't even going to watch the last episode. I was like, okay,
I would have had the same reaction.
It looked like it was coming.
It did. I was like, nope.
It's just like, no, please no. Yeah. Let me kind of get into the other stuff before I get into Captain Toole and Deidre. I will say that the actual setup was really interesting. You know, you knew Marva was going to do something, and then that kind of came out, and then it becomes a catalyst for everything that happens, because they're not expecting, a funeral to whip up a riot. That's essentially what this is. The whole thing whipped up a riot, and then the Empire ends up losing discipline, and that causes them to riot more, which I think was really, really cool. And I like that Cassian takes advantage of this to do his mission. So, he got lucky. He got really, really lucky, because otherwise they probably would have been watching, the holding pen where they were keeping Bix. But no, they're too busy trying to keep the streets clean and trying to show off their authority. And because of that, Cassian goes through all the tunnels that the Empire doesn't know about, and he operates in relative secrecy. I thought that was really cool.
Well, again, they make the mistake of thinking that he will show up for the funeral itself, that he's going to be in the crowd.
Yeah.
And I will say he had a different
one
focus.
thing that redeems him here, that redeems the decision for him to come to Ferrix for this. Because it's like, I think Cassian is starting to think a little bit like Luthen. He's learned his lesson from the mistake that he made. He remembers, it's like, okay, how did I get into this to begin with? Well, it's because I knew enough to blend in and not attract attention. And he does this here. And on top of that, it's like, okay, well, everybody's going to be distracted by Marva's funeral. I'm going to take advantage of this, and I'm going to rescue Bix. Okay, and I can kind of see them thinking this on the basis of, I just got out of prison, where I was in a labor camp and I was being forced to work, and I'm seeing what the Empire has done, and I'm not going to let this happen to my friend. You might not like that friend. She may not be a character that we like, but you understand that impulse. So I felt like, even though they don't openly say why he does this, I like that you can do the work of the show to make that conclusion. And Cassian's arc here, feels more natural because of that. And because all the pieces are there, you can definitely add all that up. That's fine. And the only issue that I kind of had with the setup of this was, why is Luthen on the planet? You would think that Luthen would want to not be identified as Axis. I mean, he's already got a couple of people on the planet that can do the job for him. I don't understand why Luthen is putting himself at risk there. The only thing is like, why he's there is because he and Cassian have to kind of patch together their differences and go off in the sunset. But I just felt like they don't do a good job of explaining why Luthen takes the risk of going back, why he felt like he had to observe this directly. I feel like we needed some explanation about that. Other than that, I think that whole setup really works. Now, to the moment we were all waiting for, Captain Tool and Dedra. I'm just like, they keep wanting to kind of push the idea of a romance between the two. I'm sure that from his perspective, that's what this is.
Right.
The thing is that Dedra, I kind of feel like Dedra was taken aback in the entire situation, because she's somebody who falls back on her training, but I don't get the feeling that she's that experienced in the field as a field commander. I think she's very good at being kind of like an inspector, a cop from a bit of a distance, and kind of running things, back in Coruscant. But, here she is having to be directly in charge of an entire operation, and, she kind of chokes. And it's not entirely unrealistic, I kind of feel, for that to happen. But at the same time, it seems like a lot of this is set up just so Captain Tool can save her. And that whole thing makes me groan. Like, really, you're relying on this guy who was a complete failure the last time he went to Ferrix? I'm like, and I'm kind of amazed that people are not, trying to hurt this guy on sight. Because they probably remember Captain Tool.
Derpy said it, not me. I didn't say it.
No.
I was thinking it, but I didn't say it.
I have no doubt Captain Tool wants to, do that to her, but I don't think she wants that. I think the only reason her reaction makes any sense at all is because she's in shock. She is completely, she's been saved from a really bad situation. And, she's kind of reacting on instinct. I don't think that this is necessarily her responding that way. Now, if it turns out that it is later,
somebody's personal space, you
Yeah.
know, you have to think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, I just hope that it does not become that. I do not want to see a romance between these two. Not at all. I think she's too smart for him. I think that she is too competent for him. And I think that, and I think he only would bring her down in every way. I don't want to see that. But I don't mind it. I would not mind it in the sense of, you know, he has this unrequited thing for her that she's never going to reciprocate. And, you know, this guy is so obsessive that he doesn't take a hint. I could totally see that. And that's kind of what I'm hoping it is. So I'm hoping that season 2 does not have, you know, things going the way that they seem to set it up.
Hey guys, just as an aside, what did you guys think about, like, I thought the Louisiana style funeral band was pretty awesome. And that's like another layer of culture.
Yes.
That's one of the things I do enjoy about like sci-fi operas, that sort of thing. Is seeing you see the culture of Vulcan, the culture of the Klingons, the Romulans, and we don't get a whole lot of that in Star Wars. So I do appreciate seeing little things like that here.
Now, I agree with that. I really enjoyed that too, and I thought it was another great touch, and really kind of personalized what was going on there. All right, let's move to our last episode. Our last episode, episode 12. Is called Rick's Road. And so it's really just all the payoffs we just got through talking about in terms of how the show ends. So how can I put this? Let me ask it this way. Were you satisfied with the conclusions of the characters? When we get to the end of this episode, were you satisfied with how everything has played out with what we saw? And do you really want a season 2? Like, is a season 2 necessary at this point? Do we really want that? So let me hear your thoughts on that. Start with Bracey.
Yeah, I want a season 2. I do want to see, like Derpy just said, I do want to see more about what's going on with Deidre. I want to see more about what's going on with Mon Mothma. I definitely want to see more Luthen. Because for me, he's the most interesting character in the show. I was waiting to see how they were going to tie things up, and I was beginning to say,
agreed.
I was beginning to think that they weren't going to actually have Cassian and Luthen meet up and start their own alliance, but they managed to squeeze that in the last moment, and it kind of makes sense because he's seen enough of how Luthen operates. And he even tells his friends how to get off planet safely because he's following the way Luthen handles things. So I figure, like, okay, that's how he found his way to Luthen's his ship. He figured out, like, he's going to be in this sort of area. He's going to fly in low. He's going to do all this. So I'm going to beat him to the punch. I'm going to beat him back to the ship. So I did kind of buy that. And I did sort of like his interaction there where he's like, you know, kill me or bring me in. And for Luthen, that's the only two ways Cassian Andor can exist. He's either got to be on board or he's got to be under the ground. Mm-hmm. So that's what goes on there. I am absolutely unhappy about Captain Toole, as I think we all are. You know, I'm still waiting for this guy to be eaten by a Rancor. You know, caught in an explosion.
He'd give the Rancor indigestion.
Yeah, run over by a bantha, you know, fall in the Sarlacc pit, something worthy of his innate toolness. You know, fall into the reactor shaft, anything horrifically Star Wars. Please, can we have that happen to this guy? Because he is like the worst character running around to get screen time. You know, DT, you often talk about how, like, if you take a character out of the story, would they matter? Mm-hmm. And he doesn't matter past his initial obsession in the first couple episodes. We could have done without hearing about him ever again. It really wouldn't have mattered to the story at all. So I don't give two damns about this guy. I'm just, at this point, it's like a slasher movie. I'm just waiting to see how he gets off, and I'm hoping it's creative. That's where I am with this guy. Yeah, always a bigger fish. Exactly. So, you know, I'm not invested in him. I find it really weird that they keep pushing this guy. It's so weird that they keep pushing him. maybe Deidre will shoot him. That'd be pretty epic. I'd enjoy that. But or she's totally uses him as an expendable pawn, and and then he knows at the end. That'd be nice too.
I'm sure that's coming. That's my personal opinion.
It's got to be. But yeah, I'm invested enough for a season 2. Like I said, the trajectory of the show has gone up and up and up. I don't care about Bix that much either. She's not a very interesting character at all. Nope. But I do want to see a lot of the other characters. I want to see the storylines. There's enough interesting things going on. I want to see what's going to happen with Mon Mothma hooked up with Davo and the interplay with her family and his now. That's actually pretty interesting. So lots of things in play. Can never have too much Luthen. But I will say this about Cassian, who did become like a main character finally in the back end of this this show. When Bix said like, Cassian will find us. He'll find us. He's like, yes, I will find you. I was like, bastard, you ain't even found your sister yet. Don't make them promises.
No, I would not take Jar Jar back.
I like Jar Jar in Clone Wars, I like him more than I like Cyril.
I want Jar Jar.
I will take Jar Jar over Cyril if he's a Sith Lord.
Give me Jar Jar.
Cyril's obsession with Dedra means that he has to be jailed or killed.
Yeah.
Because she won't be able to continue to function.
Something appropriately horrible is going to happen to him, but I wonder what they're going to do is, because the last thing she got from her commander is like, if you want that conversation, succeed here. But this is no success. So I'm wondering if she's going to face demotion, and somehow they're going to tie these two together more, and that would be the worst thing for this character, for her to try and start climbing back up the ranks.
Can I give you a nugget from my writer's brain on that?
Give that nugget.
Well, first of all, as far as the way this ends,
Nim nuggets.
I
want
the
5-piece, 7-piece, or 12-piece?
Yes, I want the Sith Lord Jar Jar. So, yeah, I thought this ended okay. No, it was better than okay. It was good. The only thing I had was that I thought Luthen was a little too accommodating at the end with Cassian. I think Cassian should have gotten a drop on him. I have some thoughts
on that, but go on.
Or something like that. I thought that could have been developed a little better. And there's a number of thoughts. But here's what I would do. Hearing you guys talk, I just had to throw this out there. So, in general, I thought it ended okay. A little better than okay. I do want to see a season 2. But what I would do with Deidre and Cyril is that I would have Deidre eventually have she's trying to track these people down and have failure after failure, and she's getting in bad with the ISB, and she gets compromised, and Luthen leverages her being compromised and turns her to the rebellion, and she has to kill Cyril as proof as she defends over. That's what I would do.
I would be down with that. I'd be down with that.
So I would have eventually Luthen find out about everything going on with her and how her head is on the line, and then have Luthen turn Deidre.
Now, if that's the play, though, here's the counterplay to that. I like that idea a lot. But then she has to have her own thing where she's like, I'm going to infiltrate the rebellion so I can destroy them, so I can get my position back.
Well, there's
so
one
she's
other
playing
thing.
Her own game.
She would kill Cyril either as a proof or because Cyril finds out about it. He's a tool. He's Captain Tool. But then the other thing that would really cement Luthen as the master manipulator is that Luthen finds out that his ISB contact now is jeopardized. He recruits Deidre and has Deidre burn that guy and get him killed to get someone else in deeper who's higher up.
He could totally do that.
If Dedra has to kill Cyril, I do not see how she struggles with that decision. Okay.
Yeah. No. But
I would be sleeping very easily with killing.
As far as adding intrigue and adding layers and all that to the whole, Luthen playing the games and master manipulator and all of that. Wow. I would love to see that.
Like she'll shoot him as quick as Cassian shot that guy in the control room just to make a point. Bam! No look shot. Bam!
Let me throw this in.
Oh yeah, definitely, absolutely on that.
Let me throw this in, and then I'm gonna throw it to Steve. I liked how basically the daughter and the son, Mon Mothma's daughter and Davos' son, kind of warmed up to each other, even though he looked kind of short. She looked taller than him. They both kind of
Well,
looked,
you know, teenage boys are shorter than teenage girls.
well, they both look like, you know, okay, we're going to enjoy this marriage for what it's worth. And Mon looked horrified. What I want to see now in the season 2, if that's going to happen, Mon Mothma to me now feels like a derivative of Walter White. She's in over her head.
He is the danger.
She's gotten involved with some. Well, I want to see how far bad she has to break.
Never seen Breaking Bad, so.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, you seriously need to watch that show. I want
All
to see
the episodes are still on Netflix if you had it.
how far bad she's going to have to break to make this thing work. Because again, in Jedi, you know, her most famous line is "Many Bothans died," but she doesn't seem to have the backdrop of her family. So somewhere along the way, but I mean, I don't, you know. And then also she name dropped Canto Bite, which I thought was hilarious. But I'm saying her husband is another one that I can't possibly see surviving.
Right.
He's the kind of dude that doesn't belong in her cadre. He doesn't belong in that life, and I don't think he wants that life.
Am I the only person that hates that guy though?
Oh
No.
He is.
Oh no, he's despicable. Yeah,
I actually like that smooth play she made of like setting him up as the reason that the finances are all screwed up, knowing that like her driver was going to be listening in.
I have a feeling he's going to
That
end
was
up
a slick
dead because
move.
of the stuff he's doing.
Yeah, but I mean, he's a super beta, so you can't like him if he's a super beta. I mean, you know,
Just
but I'm
another
saying
tool.
What I want to see is the realization from Mon as she continues to break bad and gets deeper in this thing, as to, you know, what it's really going to cost her, because she's the only one in the mix that seems the least aware of what the cost would be of what a rebellion is. Super beta power. And so I actually do want to see that. I don't see Cassian having a larger arc because he's basically now like he is in Rogue One. It's not, you know, it's not this big leap in character. So I don't really see him having an arc, or if it is an arc, maybe it's a small one.
Yeah, small one I could see,
like
because I think he hasn't yet gotten to the point where he's extreme, to the point where I'm willing to kill Galen Urso yet. I think he hasn't quite gotten there yet. He just started really joining the rebellion. I don't think we've seen the fervor that he reaches later. So I think that
he's got to get that ruthlessness to him.
Ryder's Nugget. You ready for this one? Luthien has an arc. Here it is between this and Rogue One. What we saw at the end.
Cassian?
Yeah, Cassian. He's going.
Yeah, Luthen's arc I'll get into.
He's going to become Luthien's apprentice, basically, and learn the ropes.
Yep.
At some point, what you do is you make Luthien have to be burned, and Cassian is going to have to be the one to do it, and he's going to have to become the Luthien, take up Luthien's role and say, there are no personal relationships in a rebellion, and this man who has taught you the ropes, you're going to have to burn him and sacrifice him to the Empire.
As a matter of fact, Luthen will tell him to.
Yeah,
Luthen will tell him, like, this is the move to make.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he may very well have planned his own sacrifice at some point.
And Kino's going to come from behind his chair talking about the precious.
What do I sacrifice?
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I think that Luthen in this episode, to start with, I think a lot of this episode is about how Luthen changes his mind regarding Cassian, because he's somebody who is the kind of planner who is capable of improvising, you know, in the moment. He is very much that Batman type of thinker, but some of the really truly great planners are able to sort of see, you know, things pop up and is able to adjust on the fly. I think that there's a little bit of that going on with Luthen. And I think there are two factors that make him reconsider Cassian. One is Marva's big speech. He seemed actually genuinely affected by it.
Yeah.
Like he was saying, yeah, you know, maybe there are other ways to inspire people to join the rebellion other than, you know, the kind of dark things he's been playing. But I don't think it's just that. I think he starts to see like where Cassian comes from, like the kind of person he's like, if this kind of person, raised Cassian, some of it had to have come down to him. And I think that starts making him think, okay, maybe this is somebody who could potentially be a rebel operative if he opens his eyes enough, which he does at the end of the episode. And I think he starts to see that. The other thing is that he starts seeing that Cassian is competent. Like, he has grown in terms of his ability, and because of all the things that went on in Ferrix. Like, he didn't really see Cassian anywhere. The Empire did not catch him, even though they were actively looking for him. So I think he starts saying, okay, maybe this is not the same wet behind the ears, parts salesman that I met at the beginning. I think he starts growing to see that Cassian has more potential than he had initially anticipated. I mean, and the guy and Cassian, and how does Cassian find him? Luthen walks into his ship, realizes that somebody's there, and then Cassian has a gun on him. And I think Luthen's like, you know what? I think he's, I think I'm willing, if you're willing to work for me, and I'm willing to take you up on that offer, because you have proven to me that you are more than what I initially took you for. And so I think that this whole episode's about him changing his mind and reevaluating him.
Since we keep referring to Luthen as a Batman-style character, do you think they're going to have a similar relationship where bringing Robin into the mix polish some of Batman's rough edges, but then Batman in turn toughens up Robin?
Yeah. I think so, because I think Luthen is already starting to see at this point that as dark as he's gone, maybe there might be other ways to do it aside from sending people to their deaths. And he admits, I'm living with these ghosts in my head. My mind made my mind a sunless space. And I'm thinking, he's starting wondering, maybe there's a ray of light, and maybe Cassian can help, be that ray of light, even if he's not able to himself.
Pop question: which Robin and from which era of DC Comics are we talking about here?
Dick Grayson, of course.
Dick Grayson, obviously.
Original Robin, because Grayson was one that suggested he become Batman's partner. It wasn't Batman's idea.
Evil Nim is going to keep his mouth shut right now. So.
Don't be talking about the Todd.
I mean, Cassian has a little bit of Damian in him, but I think, but in principle, I think it's more.
I was about to say, don't be bringing the Todd into it. We voted, he died.
Look at the private chat. That's all I'm going to say. So,
so in conclusion,
I will say no to that.
So in conclusion, I do think that there was a lot of payoff. I do think there was a lot of setup. I will say continually that this show is actually The Rebellion Begins. Mm-hmm. That's the actual frame of this show. It's not a Cassian Andor show. It's the beginnings of the rebellion. But that is enjoyable. They did make it interesting. They did make it intriguing. They did give us many characters we'd like to follow, and characters who we know how their fate plays out because of Rogue One, and Return of the Jedi. But we still want to see what happens in the meantime. There's some characters we don't care if we ever see again. There's always those. But more than anything else, especially when they had the episode when they were all out in the forest and they'd been eating tree bark and drinking tree milk, and they'd been living, barely existing, probably eating grubs and whatnot. I think it added a visceral, grassroots, real life. This is really how the rebellion started. These are really the key players that were willing to make whatever sacrifices, and they ended up sacrificing more than they thought. That's kind of the whole point of Rogue One. This is what was going on in the underbelly to make Luke Skywalker possible. All of these unsung heroes that we haven't seen until now, who push themselves to the edge of sanity, push themselves to the edge of physical capability, risk their reputation, risk their fortunes, sacrifice their families, because they knew that if Palpatine goes unchecked, the galaxy was forever going to be a dark place. Kind of like what they said would happen at the end of Highlander if the Kurgan won the prize. Same idea. And so I think this show did a great job of that.
I can't agree with. Oh, go ahead.
I think it did a great job of tying in a human, boots on the ground, if such a thing were real, verisimilitude element of stuff that you just really felt. And that's why almost everybody in the show is on edge all the time, because the Empire is trying to expand its tenuous grip on the galaxy, realizing that They've got strong philosophy, but they're understaffed. And they have to make sacrifices to keep the illusion of power going. And the rebellion realizes this is nothing but sacrifice for the greater good of the galaxy, having any chance to get out from underneath Palpatine's rule. And accomplishing that, I think, is what makes the show worth watching when you view it as a whole, because you have to watch the whole season to get all the payoff that we're talking about now. Go ahead, Nims.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can't agree with you enough on The Rebellion Begins. I agree with you so much that if I was running Disney, which I'm not, I would rebrand the series for season 2 as The Rebellion Begins, because it gives you so much more to go, so many more places to go.
I don't think they'll do that because they don't want brand confusion with Rebels. Companies do that all the time. They don't want two things that sound too much like the other
Birth of the Rebellion, or there's any number of ways. I think the concept is really good, so much so that, hell, work in some live action Rebels in there at some point. They're doing it anyway. They're bringing Ezra Bridger in at after, so why not?
Yeah, we know Hera fought in the Battle of Scarif in World One. I mean, they were making references.
I mean, it's nice to see stuff like this, like the way we saw Bo-Katan from the Clone Wars pop up in Mando. So
yeah,
I like that they're pulling these resources together and bringing them into there. And even in a movie I hated, like I did kind of appreciate the nod to Canto Bight. If Mon Mothma's husband has a gambling problem, I was like, okay, yeah, that's it doesn't excuse the movie, but it was a nice little nod to something that exists in the world.
It's like Babu Frick showing up in Mando season 3.
What was the name of Daenerys' character from Solo? I wonder if we'll ever see her again. Probably.
Kira? I have no idea.
That sounds right. I think it was Kira with a Y.
Because honestly, I would like to see some more about Darth Maul as the leader of the Black Sun, because that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody on this show shows up with a lightsaber, that episode is going to dominate. So if you ever see a Jedi or a Sith, hiding underneath a rock or whatever, and they get uncovered, like I say almost every week now, I so love the Charles Soule Vader books.
Yeah,
and there's so much rich backstory going on there, but you get to see inside of Vader's mind when he's meditating. But the way he's drawn is that his body that's still organic is red and black, and his severed limbs.
When he's in that kind of astral plane part, yeah.
Yes, and I love that, because again, it adds a depth, because the movie Revenge of the Sith did not do a good job of differentiating, was Anakin doing what he was doing because of his love for Padme or because of his lust for power? The movie
it was because of his fear.
It was both, but I don't know. I think it could have done a better job of differentiating the two. But when you read the Soul books, you see him struggling between the two. You see him trying to find out what's going on with Padme and the astral plane. You see him trying to deal with his power, but you also see his bitterness. Because how can you not be bitter when you're a shell of the man you used to be?
Yeah, I stopped reading Marvel comics a couple of years ago because the majority of them just got like meh to yeah. But the Darth Vader series has been consistently knocking it out of the park every series I've read.
So I'm bringing that up to say we now have a new set of heroes that again support or feed into us rooting for Luke Skywalker, that we now know, even beyond Rogue One, that things couldn't have happened without them. And I think that's powerful to add something to the Star Wars legend and canon, that powerful, that's not really Skywalker based, but it's legit, it's real. And that's what I think sets this show apart from a lot of other shows, that it did that and it did it well. And we care now, even though we started out very meh, we care now. And that as a writer, I think is just a great way to salvage and pull out what could have been an abomination of a show, what could have been a bore of a show, what could have had us rolling our eyes. Now we're not feeling that way at all. And I think that's phenomenal.
My hope is that they keep the Force and they keep lightsabers out of the mix. This should be the story of just the regular people in the universe.
We could spend a lot of time speculating what's going to happen to characters, but according to official releases from Disney, Lucasfilm has confirmed that there will be a 12-episode second season that originally was supposed to be a 5-season plan, which was deemed to be physically impossible to the series scale, and it's been scaled down to 3 seasons. And that the end of season 3 will lead directly into the beginning of Rogue One.
Okay,
Cool.
Awesome.
they have a plan.
That was one more season I thought there was going to be.
Unlike the sequels, they actually have a plan.
Actually have a plan.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun to see him pull it off. All right. Any last thoughts you guys want to throw out?
I want Luthen's Hallcraft. That was a really great scene where they kind of show what happens when Luthen actually runs him into Imperial Battio. He's a badass pilot, and it's with this little Hallcraft that everybody underestimates, he wipes out a bunch of TIE fighters and does a bunch of damage to an Imperial Arrestor class cruiser. That, I mean, if you didn't have enough reason to love Luthen, that is definitely a scene to watch.
It was also nice to see one of those cruisers that were left over from the Clone Wars. You know, they're still using the lesser cruisers. So that was another nice little member berry that worked out pretty nicely. Mm-hmm. And I will say that I did lament in a lot of times like a lack of aliens. I don't know about you guys, but I kind of dug the lumpy, sarcastic aliens on the prison planet. Who just like easily captured them, and they're like, we'll turn you in for a nice little thing. No, we're just kidding with you. We hate the Empire. You take the ship.
Yeah, I would say this, that I think this series shows what all of us knew, which is that there is much, much more to Star Wars than Jedi and Skywalkers and lightsabers. Not that I don't like those things, which I do, but there are a ton of stories to tell and a ton of content that can be created. And, there are any number of things, even going backwards, things that we know about that we'd love to see explored. Like, I personally would love to see a movie or a short miniseries about the Empire conquering Mandalore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's so much stuff from the EU that they've been slowly dribbling in. We've got decades of content. We could have like more about Thrawn, obviously, Zizor, and the Sun Eater, and so many other stories that were told that were not just about Force users.
And personally,
it's great to see him doing stuff like this.
I still think they need to do a Splinter of the Mind's Eye movie, but that's just me. So
yeah, I'd be down for that.
That would be awesome in the right hands.
Or a miniseries.
All right, guys, we're going to call it again. Very enjoyable end to a season. We definitely
Sebastian Stan as Luke Skywalker.
What'd you say?
I'm still voting for Sebastian Stan as Luke Skywalker.
Okay, that's interesting.
For Splinter of the Mind's Eye, Sebastian Stan, bring him in.
So if they keep telling some good stories on this level, it's definitely possible to keep some audiences interested and maybe get some people back and maybe repair some of the brand damage. I don't know if they can do that with the movies, but if they keep this kind of level, this kind of emotional and storytelling payoff, it's entirely possible. But that remains to be seen, because there's like 20 more Star Wars shows coming out. So we'll have to see, if we cover them all and what level they are if we do cover them. So I want to thank my co-host. Thank you so much, Nims. Thank you so much, Bracy. Thank you so much, Steve.
Yeah, I will say just before we kind of sign off, the one thing I really love about Andor is that this show gets better with every episode. We have not seen that consistently happen on anything else that we've covered. So good on them for doing that.
Agree completely. All right, me and this crew.
You couldn't just gesture like the rest of us, could you, Steve?
Yeah. No, I had that. I was holding onto that, and I wanted to get it.
Steve had to be different. Me and this crew, we will see you next time.
The Empire demands it.
On the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers. Y'all have a good night. We're out.
Captain Tool says goodbye.
Yeah.